to Being Right, the Help Self podcast. We don't live in the world as it is. We live in the world as we perceive it. So let's slow down, hold the question, and allow clarity to arrive.
Sometimes there's a man, I won't say a hero, because what's a hero? But sometimes there's a man, and I'm talking.
Here's a dangerous idea. What if the most powerful force in human history is not violence, not domination, not even being right, but refusing to fight at all? Not out of weakness, but out of clarity. What if the only thing more dangerous than a man with a weapon is a person who no longer needs one? And immediately, something in us resists that. Because we've been taught if you don't fight back, you lose. If you don't defend yourself, you're weak. If you're not right, you're vulnerable. So let's... Because there's a lineage of people who tested a completely different idea, and it changed the world. Let's start with a Russian writer, Leo Tolstoy. Most people know him for his book War and Peace, but towards the end of his life, Tolstoy became obsessed with a question: why do humans justify violence and call it moral? He looked at governments, at war, at punishment, and he came to a radical conclusion. Most systems of order are built on violence and then justified after the fact. He goes back to a teaching of Jesus: resist not evil. And Tolstoy says we've misunderstood this. This doesn't mean ignore evil, approve of evil, pretend it's not happening. It means don't meet evil on its own terms. Because once you do, you enter a loop. I'm right, you're wrong, I must correct you, correction escalates, now you must defend, now I escalate further. And before long, we are fighting evil by becoming more of it. Tolstoy said something deeply uncomfortable. Violence doesn't solve the problem. It reproduces it. Before we move on in this lineage, I want to make this personal, because this isn't just philosophy for me. It's something I've wrestled with. I was in college, finishing up my last year of undergraduate school, not really sure what I wanted to do next. And then September 11th, 2001 happened. A lot of people say they remember exactly where they were on that day. I don't. I don't remember the room or the moment that I first saw the crashes happen. What I remember is something else. I went to a university with a lot of international students, a lot of Middle Eastern students, and I remember feeling afraid, not for myself, afraid for them. People are going to look at them differently now. Maybe they're going to be treated differently. And these people were. Something happened inside me that moment. Put myself in their position. What would it feel like to suddenly be seen as the enemy in a place you now call home? That's what stayed with me. But at the same time, there was another pull, strong one. I had always wanted to be a Navy SEAL. You know, good Texas kid. Dad was a Marine. played football. Being a Navy SEAL felt like the definition of becoming a man. And after 9/11, that pull got stronger. I remember thinking, I'm going to go in the military. I'm going to fight in the war on terror. It felt right. It felt justified. It felt like the thing you're supposed to do. Something didn't sit right, and I couldn't ignore it. I remember talking to my dad about this, and he tried to dissuade me. He said, "This might not be a just war." I didn't fully understand that at the time, but it stuck with me. And while I was working as a lifeguard at the local YMCA, I remember talking to one of the older swimmers, one of those guys who had been around life. And I told him, I feel conflicted. I want to serve, but what if somebody tells me to do something that I don't believe is right? And I'll never forget his response. He told me, well, that would be on them. They're your superior officer. And that's where something in me said, no, that can't be right. Because at some point, it has to be on me. And around that time, I came across a book. It's titled, The Kingdom of God is Within You, Leo Tolstoy, and it hit me hard. Tolstoy was making a claim that felt almost impossible. There is never a good reason to resist evil using force. That violence doesn't end evil, it continues it. And he pointed to Jesus, not as a symbol, but as an example, as someone who faced power, injustice, violence, and did not return it. And I remember thinking, this doesn't line up with how we usually understand strength, especially not in a country that identifies as Christian and operates as a global power. And I had to wrestle with that. Now, let me be clear. This is not me saying there's no place for military. There is. This is not me saying there's no place for protection. There is. That's the world we live in. But I began to feel there might be something deeper, a different way of responding when things go beyond protection and into something else. And I couldn't ignore it. So I didn't go. I didn't join the Navy. I've wrestled with that decision many times in my life. Years later, at the age of 39, I even tried this thought process again. I trained with one of my roommates who is an Army diver certified as a Ranger. I was preparing to try out for the Air Force to become a pararescue. I had some people supporting me. Even one of my childhood friends, who is now a career Army officer, wrote a letter of recommendation for me to go into the Air Force. And I was ready physically and mentally. But something strange happened. The paperwork got messed up. Communication broke down.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Timing fell apart, and I missed the window. Right about that same time, my wife became pregnant with our daughter, Finley. And looking back, it wasn't my path. Not because it's wrong, but because it wasn't mine. And I have friends in the military, people I respect deeply, and I want them to walk their path fully. This is not a call to dismantle the military. It's not a call to dismantle hierarchy. And this is not a call to dismantle nations. It's something much quieter than that. It's a call question. Not your side, not your identity, not your group. Something deeper.
The kingdom of heaven is within you.
And maybe the invitation is simple. Take a breath. Before you fight for your side, before you defend your belief, before you act, pause. Let that deeper truth guide you. Now, take that idea, let's move it into the real world a little bit further back in history. We have Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi reads Tolstoy, and instead of just agreeing with him, he tests it at scale. He gives this a name, Satyagraha. Satya, truth. Graha, holding firmly to truth. But here's the key. This is not passive. It's not weakness. It's not doing nothing. Satyagraha is non-cooperation with evil without hatred for the other person. Think about how radical that is. You resist the system, but you refuse to turn the opponent into an enemy. People told Gandhi, this won't work. You're going to be crushed. Power only responds to force. And Gandhi didn't argue. He demonstrated. The Salt March, mass non-cooperation, willingness to suffer without retaliation. He moved from we are right and must win to we will hold to truth and refuse to become what we oppose. And something strange happened. The system began to crack. Okay, let's go back a little bit further. Before Gandhi, before the marches, before the headlines, there was a man sitting quietly in a jail cell. Henry David Thoreau. No crowd, no movement, no applause. Just a decision. He refused to pay a tax because that tax supported a system he could not stand behind. And they put him in jail. And here's the part that matters. It wasn't protest as performance. It wasn't strategy. It was alignment. He saw something clearly and refused to participate in what violated that clarity. And sitting there in that cell, he realized something that most of us spend our entire lives avoiding. In an unjust society, the right place for a just person may be in prison. That's not political. That's existential. Because now the question isn't what works. The question is, what do you do when you see clearly?
Open your eyes.
And that, right there, is the flame. Not the jail, not the essay, not the quote. The moment a person sees and refuses to betray what they see. Now, bring it back forward and into America again. Martin Luther King Jr., segregation, violence, humiliation, injustice. And again, the same pressure. Fight back. Defend yourselves. Meet force with force. But King's claim was, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And we hear that as a moral statement. But this is also strategic. What he understood was, nonviolence does something very specific. It exposes injustice. disrupts the system, and refuses to reinforce the cycle of retaliation. Move to South Africa. Desmond Tutu. After apartheid, the country stood at a crossroads. Revenge or reconciliation? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission was a radical move. Tell the truth, acknowledge harm, but do not respond with mass retaliation. That's almost unthinkable. But Tutu understood something critical. If you punish at scale, you recreate the system you just destroyed. So instead, truth without revenge. But now let's be honest. Everything we've talked about sounds idealistic because the objections are real. It's too slow. It only works sometimes. It requires too much suffering. Maybe the deepest one, it feels like we're doing nothing. But Satyagraha is not doing nothing. It's refusing to participate in the illusion that force creates truth. It's stepping out of the loop. Now, zoom out. Look at the world today. Politics, social media, culture wars, global conflict. Everyone is certain. Everyone is convinced we are right. Certainty becomes identity. Identity becomes defense. Defense becomes attack. Attack becomes escalation. Now, the loop isn't just personal. It's global. And this is where it gets interesting. Because even now, there are people trying to relate to truth differently. Not perfectly, not without error, but sincerely. There's a modern example of this kind of force, and it doesn't look like protest. It doesn't look like power. It looks like someone quietly telling the truth. A man named Professor Jiang. He runs a channel called Predictive History. And what's striking about it is not what he argues. It's what he refuses to do. He's not trying to win. He's not trying to persuade you. He's not even trying to be agreed with. He's trying to see clearly and then say what he sees. Which sounds simple until you realize how rare that is. Because most of us speak to be right, to defend, to convince, to belong. But this is something else. This is closer to Satyagraha. Not force through argument, but force through truth.
That's a great question, and it's a problem, right? Because, as you say, your parents, the school, society brainwashes you to believe that only money matters, only grades matter. Okay? And the answer is, you have to be brave. You have to be true to yourself, because you yourself know what is true, right? If we didn't know, then Jesus would not matter. Why do 2 billion people believe in Jesus? Because they know that Jesus spoke the truth. Okay? So listen to your heart. I know it's hard, and most of us cannot do it. Okay? And that's why in many traditions, like Buddhism and Hinduism, reincarnation is important. Because maybe in this lifetime we don't figure it out, maybe in the next lifetime. But maybe then, 50 lifetimes away. But eventually you'll figure it out. Eventually you'll figure out that what other people say does not matter, because this world we live in is a false world. Eventually you'll figure that out. And you're like, you know what I should do? I should do what I believe to be true. And then what you recognize is, oh, when I actually do what I like, what I enjoy, it makes me a more fulfilled person. And guess what? It connects me to the divine.
And we've seen this before. Leo Tolstoy saw it and wrote about non-resistance. Mahatma Gandhi lived it and called it Satyagraha, truth force. Martin Luther King Jr. carried it forward and showed the world what happens when truth refuses to fight back. And here's what connects them. It's not politics. It's not strategy. It's not even morality. It's that they've stopped trying to win. They stopped trying to defeat the other side and started refusing to distort what they saw.
Open your eyes.
And when that happens, something strange occurs. The fight begins to collapse. Because a fight requires two people, each trying to be right. But what do you do with someone who no longer needs to be right? What do you do with someone who won't fight you? Not because they're weak, but because they see no one there to fight. This is the part we don't like, because it means the most powerful force in the room is not the one who wins the argument. It's the one who no longer needs one. And that might be the most dangerous person of all. Not the one who fights, but the one who simply refuses to. Because with a Satyagrahi, someone who holds firmly to truth, practices nonviolence, refuses to coerce, dominate, or hate, is willing to suffer rather than make another suffer. There's nothing against push. No ego to hook into, no position to collapse. Just a light, held steady. Whether you agree or disagree almost doesn't matter, because the point isn't agreement. The point is, can you see it too? And if you can, even for a moment, then something deeper than being right has already happened. The real question is not, is he correct? But how is he relating truth? Anyone interpreting history is going to get things wrong. That's unavoidable. So the question becomes, is there sincerity? Is there openness? Is there a willingness to be corrected? Because Satyagraha is not, I have the truth. It is, I'm committed to truth, even when it corrects me. There's two modes. One mode being right. I know, I defend, I attack. Another mode, Satyagraha. I see, I share, I remain open. Same topic. Completely different world. And this is where we go back to it being personal. Because right now, in real time, the same pattern is happening again. There's a voice speaking about how the world is moving. And immediately, the response is not, is this true? The response is, who is this person? This guy's not even a real professor. They're this, they're that. Maybe he's a spy. But notice what we're doing. We're trying to decide whether to look at the flame based on the hand that's holding it. But a torch bearer doesn't see it in that way. A torch bearer doesn't start with the person. They start with the light. They ask, what is being revealed here? What becomes visible if I stop arguing and just look? Because the function of the flame is not to make you loyal to the one holding it. It's to let you see.
Open your eyes.
And once you see, you don't need the torch bearer anymore. You carry it. And this is where things can get messy. Because the moment you encounter something like this, something that feels true, something that cuts through the noise, something that doesn't try to win, you don't just get the idea, you get the argument. People will say, it doesn't work, it's naive, it only works in certain conditions, that person isn't credible, that person is flawed. Maybe some of that is true, but watch what just happened. We left the flame. This is what we do over and over again. A person points to something real, something dangerous, something that could actually change how we live, and instead of testing it, we analyze the person who said it. We audit their life. We dig through their past. We decide whether they're worthy of being right. And if they're not, we throw the whole thing away. But the flame doesn't belong to them. It never did. Tolstoy didn't own it. He carried it. Gandhi didn't own it. He carried it. Thoreau didn't own it. He carried it. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't own it. He carried it. Right now, people are still carrying it. But if you're looking for a flame, you don't study the smoke. You just feel the heat. So what would this look like at scale today? Not agreement. Not everyone agreeing. Not everyone seeing things the same way. But something else. A shared shift from domination to non-escalation. At every level, individuals pause before reacting. Notice the pull to be right. Choose clarity over control. Communities move from punishment to restoration. Break cycles of retaliation. Nations, de-escalation as strength. Strategic non-cooperation instead of domination. And here's where this gets uncomfortable. Because after the people in this lineage die, we clean them up. We turn them into heroes. We turn them into statues. We turn them into something safe. And once they're safe, we say we agree with them. Of course we do. It's easy to agree with someone after the culture has already accepted them. It's easy to say we follow Jesus now. But when he was alive, you would have been in trouble for that. You would have been a sinner just for associating with him. You would have been seen as dangerous. You would have been on the wrong side of religion and the government. Not only would it have been uncomfortable, it might have cost you something. The same way people question Martin Luther King Jr., same way people question Mahatma Gandhi. Scandalous, controversial, unacceptable. That's what the flame looks like while it's still burning. But give it time, and a culture will absorb it, soften it, water it down, shape it into something it can live with. And once that happens, it's no longer threatening. But it's also not the same fire. Here's the danger. If you wait for the culture to approve the flame, you will always be too late. You will inherit the ashes and call it fire. And meanwhile, there are people right now saying things that make you uncomfortable. People being questioned, doubted, dismissed. Not because they're right, but because they are early. And if you're only looking at the container, the person, their reputation, what people are saying about them, you might miss it. You might miss a spark that could have lit your own life. So don't wait. Don't wait for history to tell you who was right. Don't wait for culture to make it acceptable. When something lands, When something feels true, take it in. Separate what's useful from what isn't. And then live it. Because the flame has never belonged to the person. It moves from one to another. And the only question is, when it reaches you, will you carry it? Because the flame doesn't live in words. It lives in how we meet each other. There's a story about a Roman soldier and Jesus. And in that moment, something is recognized. A Roman centurion, a man inside the system, a man of authority. He comes to Jesus. My servant is suffering. Jesus says, I will come. The centurion responds, no. You just say the word. I understand authority. I understand command. He understood the system, but he saw something beyond it. Jesus said, I have not found such faith. A man inside the system who could still see. Not rejecting it, not trapped by it, holding truth within. Satyagraha is not the victory of one side over another. It's the end of the need for sides at all. And maybe the deepest sign that truth is winning is that you no longer need to be right about it. And when you find yourself looking for certainty, looking for someone to follow, looking for the right answer, remember what the Buddha said, be a lamp unto yourself. Hold the question, don't rush the answer. Let the water settle and act from clarity. We'll see you next time.
What? Why you guys don't know? Is this thing working? Is this thing on? Is this thing working? Is this thing on? In the hallway of a high school, anywhere USA, was a bullet picking on different kids. Seemed like every day. A pack of backslapping buddies laughing and backing him all the way. A screaming girlfriend making believing everything he would say. Is this thing working? Is this thing on? Is this thing working? Is this thing on? Well, then one day this kid that he'd beat up a bunch of time before, he realized to his own surprise that he could indeed take more. And with that he hatched the evil plan, gonna make that devil pay. Walked up to him in the middle of the gym and he found the nerve to say, if you're gonna hit somebody today, you're gonna have to hit me too. In fact, you gonna hit me every day, cause now I'm picking on you. As crazy as that might sound right now, I ain't stopping till I get through. Too late to beg for mercy, there ain't nothing that you can do. Lord, is this thing working? Is this thing on? Is this thing working? Is this thing on? Well, that bully, he just laughed and laughed, of course. So did all of his friends. Beat that kid unmercifully for days and days on end. Only slightly less impressively to that girl and all of his friends. Eventually they would secretly start hoping that kid might win. Lord, is this thing working? Is this thing on? Is this thing working? Is this thing on? You ain't never gonna hear him say But he thinks we don't know. Winning that battle every day cost our bully the war a long time ago. And of all the scars he's got to show for every blow that kid sneaks in, the worst one's knowing that tomorrow he's gonna have to fight that kid again. Is this thing working? Is this thing on? Oh, it's working. Is this thing on?